So, page 90. If you are using the Chabad Tehillim, we're on page 90, chapter 74. You know what next chapter is? In the halfway point. There's 150 chapters in Tehillim. You get to the halfway point. I was preparing this lesson, and my father was sitting in my sister's living room last Shabbos and was looking at it, and my father asked me where I'm holding. No, when I was in Atlanta. So my father asked me where I was holding, and I told him up to Ayin Daled 74. He says, really? Wow, the halfway point. My father was of the opinion that maybe we should make a halfway point siyum. So I said, no, let me get to the end.
It's taken us 3 years to get here.
Yeah, listen, again, who's in a rush, right? Baruch Hashem. Just on time. We didn't start it. Perfect time.
I won't be able to take anybody tomorrow.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay, so we are chapter 74, Ayin Daled. We're going to start from the beginning with a basic translation and then go step by step. Maskil Asaf. So a maskil by Asaf. So already last chapter we talked about Asaf. Yeah. And I think next chapter also we're going to talk about Asaf. Yeah. So Lama Elikim Zonachta Lanetzach. Hashem, why did you forsaken Lanetzach forever? Yeshan Abcha B'tzayin Ma'isach, and got angry. But literally, Yeshan Abcha means that there's smoke that comes out of your nose, right? So it's a figure of speech, I guess, which maybe we'll talk about on the second run. B'tzayin Ma'isach, with the sheep that you are their shepherd. Zechair Adascha Kanisa Kedem. Remember your Ada, your congregation, your group, Kanisa Kedem, that you acquired them early on. Kedem could mean two things. It could mean before, like really early, or it could just mean early, which we'll talk about also as we get along. You redeemed this tribe. That was your portion. Har Tzion, the mountain in Tzion in Zion, Zeh Shachanta Boi, that you dwelled, that you rested on it or in it. Number 3, pasuk 3. Harima palmecha l'mashuos netzach. Lift your palmecha is your steps, is your feet, right? Lift your feet. L'mashuos netzach to destroy forever. Kol Heda, anybody who did ra, anybody who did negative, bad, oyev, and is a hater, is an enemy, b'kodesh of the holy. Shagu tzeirecha bekerev moyadecha. These oivim, these enemies, right? So shagu, we had this word. It's actually a biblical word. We don't really use it in the Hebrew, so it's an interesting. But it says it uses a pasuk Aryeh Shoyeg. When a lion roars, it uses the word shoyeg, right? So shagu is like a rolling laughter, a type of roaring, but here it's talking about humans, not talking about a lion, right? So it's not about a shagu. So it's a certain type of laughing, and it's coming from those that tormented the Jewish people. Bekerev moyadecha, inside the moyed. What's mayid? What's mayid? So he translates meeting room, right? Think about it. Oyel mayid. Oyel mayid is the tabernacle. Inside tabernacle was called the oyel mayid, the place of meeting. What was the place of meeting? Where's Moshe Rabbeinu went and he spoke to Hashem, right? Some oisais, some oisais, and they made their oisais. Oisais is a sign. Usually we use the word ois as a sign, a wondrous sign, like a miraculous type of wonder sign, and they made their signs. Number 5, Yivada kemevi lamala b'tzvach eitz kardumis. It should be known. Yivada means it should be known. Kemevi lamala, that it's as if they're bringing a offering lamaila above. Okay, b'tzvach eitz kardumis, axes that are wrapped in some sort of wood, in some sort of tree thicket. He translates over here, which I'll try to my hardest pasuk was pasuk Hey and Vav. 5 and 6 was my hardest pasuk for me to grasp, but I think I have an idea of what it's trying to say. It's pasuk 6, and now the ornaments with hammers and hatchets they were destroyed. smashed. Shilchu, pasuk 7, Shilchu ba'esh mikdashecha, la'aretz chilu mishkan shmecha. They destroyed the Beis Hamikdash with fire and burnt it down to the ground. Number 8, Amru b'libam ninam yachad. They said in their heart. Who said in their heart? Ninam, the leaders. That what? Sarfu kol maya dekel ba'aretz, to burn all of the meeting places in the land. Our wonders, this is Jewish people talking, right? Our wonders, our isais, our miracles, we don't see. There is no prophet anymore. And by us, we don't know until when or for what. Adma could be ad means until, ma means what. So until what would be the literal translation. Pasuk Yud and Moshe Elikim Yicharev Tzor. How long, Hashem, will you let the Tzor, the ones who are bothering the Jewish people? How long are you going to let them go on? You know it's Oyev Shimchol Netzach, and that they are trying to blaspheme. You know it's Oyev, that the enemies are blaspheming Hashem's name LaNetzach forever. How long are you going to let that happen? Pasuk 11, Lama Tashiv Yodcha v'Yiminecha. Why do you Tashiv is return, take away, Yodcha your hand, v'Yiminecha your right hand, Mikerev Chekcha Chale, take it out of your bosom, right? Take your hand out. It seems that's what there's other translations of this as well. Elikim, if you listen to the Niggin, it's on this pasuk. Elikim Malki Mikedem. But Hashem, you were the king Mikedem from the beginning. Poyel Yeshua's Bekerev Aretz, and you accomplish Yeshua's salvation Bekerev Aretz in the land. Number 13, at Perarta Ba'oz Chayom, you split the sea. At the Perarta, you split the sea. But Perarta means, I think, if I remember correctly, Perarta is more than split, is that you made them into like stones, that you split it, but you like, more like a tractor that comes and splits it, not that the water split, that you pushed away, like you push away some stones at the Perarta. Ba'ozcha with your strength, Yom, the sea, Shibarta Roshi Taninim Alamayim, and you broke Roshi, the heads of Taninim. Taninim is a biblical name for very, very big sea creatures. And we're not talking about whales. It seems we're talking about something even bigger than whales that maybe doesn't exist today. Think Leviathan. Okay, that's what you should think when we say Taninim. It's theoretically maybe even a mythical figure, but it says that when Mashiach comes, there will be a Leviathan. So who knows? Let Mashiach come.
We're going to eat him.
Exactly. Oh, he actually mentions it in the next passage. Yeah, exactly. So what's good? So where is he? I don't remember where I heard this, that he hides on the bed of the ocean. But we wouldn't know. We wouldn't know, right? Exactly. It's gonna be big enough. Anyways, that's that. So Rashi, okay, but he mentions the next pasuk. I forgot that he mentioned the next one. So Rashi Taninim Alamayim broke the heads of these big sea creatures Alamayim on the water. How do you break heads of fish on water? We'll see soon. Ata ritzatz Rashi Livyasan. You Ritzatzta, you crushed the head of Leviathan. Lititnenu Maichol la'am Tzim, and you gave it as food to a nation in Tzim in the wilderness. So Tzim is faraway lands.
How did you come to know this?
Oh, so we're going to talk about it. That's part of it.
This is when Mashiach comes.
According to some, it's not. Yeah. Pasuk 15. Out of a kaita mayan v'nachal, you split mayon, the stream, v'nachal, and the brook. Out of vashta naris eson, and you dried up the nahar, the river eson that was very strong. So these, by the way, just keep in mind, he's bringing the opposites, right? So he brings about splitting the sea versus drying up the sea. Now he brings Hashem is the creator of day, Hashem is the creator of night, dark and light. And you prepared also the moon and the sun. Number 17, he also made borders for the land, meaning that there's a limitation for the land. Also, the summer and winter also comes from you. You formed them. Number 18, so remember Hashem, remember the enemy that cursed against Hashem, blasphemed against Hashem. V'am novel ni'atzu shmecha, and a nation that blasphemed against Hashem's name. Number 19, al titen l'chayis nefesh terecha, don't give to the soul, don't give to the nations, to these nations, the chayes nations, the wild nations, nefesh, the soul, terecha, of the dove referring obviously to the Jewish people. Chayes aniyecha al tishkach lanetzach, the life force of the poor, don't forget forever. Number 20, abeit labris, focus on the bris. Bris probably means covenant. I saw another Piddush also, it means the actual bris, but focus on the covenant. Kimalu machshaki eretz nais chamas, because all the dark places of the world have filled with chamas, with hamas, with negativity, with violence. Al Yashev, pasuk 21, Al Yashev dach nichlam, don't turn back. Al Yashev, don't turn away. Dach, from the oppressed, and nichlam, the disgraced. Don't turn away from the disgraced and the oppressed. And ultimately the poor and the destitute will praise your name. Arise, Hashem, and fight for the cause that you're going to fight for. And remember those who blasphemed against you all day. And the final pasuk, al tishkach kol tzeirecha, don't forget the voice of those who made trouble, tzeirim, that they bothered the Jewish people, or there's a harsher word than bothered. She'ayin kamecha oila samid, the she'ayin is like the roar, the noise of the opponents of Hashem. Always oila samid, they're always Hashem. So, as you can see, this chapter needs a lot of explanation. Needs an explanation on many levels. So let's get into it as we start our second. Okay, as an intro, so Philip, you asked, where's this coming from? So it's very hard to answer that question. Very, very hard to answer that question. The biggest question that we have over here, and it started with last chapter, is who composed this? Who is Asaf, right? When was this composed? Because think about it. All the commentaries say that it's talking about way after David HaMelech's time. You mentioned Mashiach's time. But what about the psukim that are talking about just the destruction of the temple, which is already a few hundred years later, right? So, and Asaf, the Asaf that we know, that many attribute this, is from the times of David HaMelech. So, was it maybe composed later? Was it? This is a question it's an existential question about Tehillim. We will never get to the bottom of it. We could come up with we could bring up a lot of different opinions, but we will never get to the bottom of it and understand that in a full way. But one thing that all the commentaries do say is that these were said with Ruach Kodesh, with divine intuition, about something that will happen in the future. It's interesting because the pasuk even mentions that there is no prophet, right? So it's talking in a time of future that there is no prophet. In the time of David HaMelech,
after the time of the prophets,
after Chagai and Zechariah and Malachi, right? So that's it. There's no more prophecy in the Jewish people. There is, but not in that kind of way. Not the way Isaiah had prophecy. Not right. Not that he.
No more Nevi'im.
No more Nevi'im in that exactly. So different commentaries have different ways of approaching. Most say actually that it's talking about the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash. It's talking about talking about the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash. Some say that it's not necessarily talking about the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash, it's talking about the destruction of the Jewish people, talking about the length of Golus, just how long Golus is and all the troubles that the Jewish people go throughout Golus. So it's really the one and the same, because destruction of the temple, that's what creates Golus, right? That's what creates exile. But still, both of them.
It's like a history. I mean, it's passing through a historical period of time. It's starting with the splitting of the sea. It's starting with Hashem as a shepherd. It's starting at the very beginning and going forward in history.
Right.
It goes through the different parts of history until the destruction of the temple, and then it talks already about the time of Mashiach.
Right.
It goes through all the periods of time.
Right. But I think that when it brings up the early stuff, it's more of Hashem, you've been there before. Where are you now? That kind of way. Not that it's coming and saying, this is what we're dealing with. No, Hashem, you've been there before. Where are you now? It's interesting because also some of the commentaries, they say, I don't know if you remember, but the last chapter that we learned, Ayin Gimel, it's been a couple of weeks, but Ayin Gimel, the 73rd chapter, we talked a lot about Rasha v'Toivlai and Tzaddik v'Ralai, which are an evil man that prospers and a righteous that suffers. And that was the theme of last chapter. So some say that this is a continuing talking about the righteous, so to speak, the Jewish people that try to do what Hashem wants and are suffering at the hands of their oppressors. And that's also, if you look at the chapter, it's a very good way to go through the chapter.
Vocabulary, Kinita Kedem, Shevet Nachalatecha. This is from the song when they crossed over the sea, Am Shekanita.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go through it pasuk by pasuk.
Okay.
Good. Okay, so pasuk number one. Pasuk number one, Maskil also. So first of all, Maskil, right? In general, we've said this already many times before. Anytime it says Maskil at the beginning of chapter, it was usually a psalm that David wanted to impart a certain type of amunah, a certain type of Maskil. It has a root word of seichel, of understanding. So he wanted to get, there's a basic understanding that he's trying to give over to the people with this chapter. He's trying to break down an idea and bring it out in this chapter, and that's when he uses the word maskil. Okay, also, if we already talked about last week, last chapter, so we're not going to talk about it now, but
wasn't here last time we discussed that, but I just want to try to want an answer to something, which is Asaf the one who wrote this, or is he the one who put the music to it?
There's different opinions. Some say that Asaf wrote it. Some say that David HaMelech wrote it in order for Asaf to sing it.
Okay.
I don't know. The truth is, all of these questions, I don't even know if it makes a difference to us. Payal Mamish, right? At the end of the day. But we don't have a clarity on it. Mashiach will come and we'll see. Because there's, some of them are very clear.
Interpretations of Asaf, that's
right.
what I'm saying.
Right.
Several interpretations of them. So.
Right. And some of the chapters are very clear that David HaMelech wrote them, and David, it's David HaMelech's struggle, it's David HaMelech's success, etc. Here we're left with that, So he's asking over here. This chapter, by the way, also we're in the third book. We just started with last chapter. We started the third book of Tehillim, Sefer Shlishi of Tehillim, and this Sefer, I think it's the shortest Sefer because it goes, I think, until chapter 90. If I remember correctly, I might be wrong. It goes till chapter 90. So you're talking about 16, 17 chapters of Tehillim that is Sefer Shlishi, that is the third chapter. Some of them very long ones. Some of the longer ones are in this Sefer.
Many of them Asaf,
and a lot of and a bunch of them are Asaf. Yeah, I think if I remember correctly, almost all of them are by Asaf in this Sefer. And it has someone mentioned it last chapter that it has, I think Philip, you said that it has a much more of a different vibe to it. It has more negative. You don't have the upbeat David HaMelech Emunah B'tachan type of approach that you had before. So which also leads some to say that it was written by Asaf and not by David. But yes, it's definitely talking. It's much more somber, much more somber. So he asks, why do you forsaken forever? So the Mitzvah says he's asking, why do you forsake the Jewish people? Why would you get angry with the sheep that you're responsible to shepherd? Right? The Jewish people, Hashem is responsible to shepherd the Jewish people. Why did you forsake the Jewish people? It's interesting, and it's not just here in this chapter. If you wanted to make a cartoon character and you wanted to show someone getting angry, what would you do? You'd make smoke coming out of his nose or his ears, right? And it's biblical. This is what it says over here. Obviously, as the Radak mentions, but it's something that you don't even need the Radak to mention, that obviously the physical description over here is just to give you an analogy for you to understand what we're trying to say. But by Hashem, we're not talking about noses or ears or even anger in the physical sense. But still, this idea, when Jewish people went into Galus, Hashem was angry, and they needed to go through a purification process of Galus. But what he's asking over here is, how long is it going to be already? It's been already too long. Pasuk Beis, Pasuk 2 is Cheradascha Kenisa Kedem. You have to remember, we were asking that Hashem should remember the nation that he acquired Kedem. So what does Kedem mean? So how does he translate over here? Long ago. Kedem, you acquired them long ago. What is Kedem long ago? So Rashi comes and says, no, not long ago. You acquired them before the creation of the world. He bases that on a medrash, this famous medrash, that Hashem, in his thought process before even creation, was that the idea of Kanisa, of to acquire the Jewish people, that there should be a Jewish people here in this world. So Rashi says this is not Kedem long ago, this is Kedem before even creation, meaning this is something that he had in mind even before creation. The Mitzvah doesn't say it in that kind of way. He says Kedem is talking about long ago. What's long ago? In the times of writing the Tehillim, let's say, long ago is when did Hashem acquire the Jewish people? Going out of Egypt, right? When the Yidden left Egypt and left Mitzrayim, and Hashem brought them to the mountain. So look at the pasuk; it fits nicely with the way the Mitzvah explains it, right? Kanisa Kedem, you acquired them long ago when you took them out of Egypt. You Goalta, you redeemed them, and you brought them to Har Tzion, to a mountain where that Hashem dwelt. Hashem came down on that mountain. So whether Har Tzion would be Har Abayis in Yerushalayim, but it could be Har Sinai. It could be referring to Har Sinai.
Tzion.
I know.
Tzion is not Har Sinai.
I know, but
Tzion is Har Abayis. And I wanted to speak about this.
Tzion is Yerushalayim. It's not Har Abayis.
It's Yerushalayim, okay. But still, if it says Har Tzion, it means Har Abayis.
Right.
I wanted to speak about it. I'll speak about it after.
Go ahead.
Mention that here you see the vocabulary that's being used when they sang, when they were crossing the sea. It says, Am Yavor Am Zu Kanita Tuviemo Vatitaemo Bahar Nachalatecha. So you have both words, Kanita and Nachalatecha, exactly one after the other here.
Right.
So that's why. And what happened during this time? It's the best example of Hashem saving the Jewish people from their enemies. And this is what all this is a prayer for, to save the Jewish people from all the evil people that are against them.
Yeah.
So it's a similar idea. It's asking Hashem to remember, look what you did in the past for us.
Right. And we praise you this way. Yeah. We use these words.
Yeah.
Even the words of praise is reminding Hashem the words of praise that was used then. Very good. Very good. Yeah. So, and the Radak, who, as I mentioned, that some learn it that when he talks about earlier experiences, it's to remind Hashem. So Radak says very simply that just as the psalmist over here is saying, just as you remembered Hashem, just as you remembered the Jewish people and took them out of Egypt, out of the Egyptian exile, you should remember the Jewish people also and take them out of the current exile and bring them to Har Tzion. So some say Har Tzion is referring to Har Tzion only when Mashiach comes. Not now Har Tzion, but bring them to the ultimate Har Tzion when Mashiach comes and the base of Mikdash will be built in Yerushalayim. So some say it's referring to the Gula. Some say that this whole chapter was said in Zion, and that's why he says Har Zion. He says this is where he said the chapter. He said it's a chapter in Yerushalayim, and therefore he said Har Zion. What does that mean?
From Zion, the Torah comes out.
I thought Torah comes from Sinai, not from Zion. I'm just playing with you.
You're already putting your feet in. I know, don't worry about it. But my argument is gonna put your argument
no problem
aside, because it's not gonna deal with your other stuff, which we have to deal.
Okay. Very good. Okay, Pasuk Gimel, Pasuk 3. So Harima Palmecha. So again, the psalmist over here is complaining about the troubles that the Jewish people are going through in exile. So he says, lift up your feet, right, and destroy anybody who started up with Bakodesh, with the holy. So obviously, it's talking about those who started up with the Jewish people, right? But Rashi says that he's asking for revenge for those who destroyed the Beis Hamikdash. Those who call Heira Oyev, they did negative. What did they destroy? They destroyed the Beis Hamikdash. That's the simple pshat of the pasuk. It's interesting that the Sfarno over here comes and says, "What's Bakodesh?" If you look at the pasuk again, right? So lift up your feet, remember those, or take revenge onto those who did bad. Kol Hera, the enemies that did bad. What's Bakodesh? In the holy. So the simple pshat is Bakodesh, that they destroyed the Kodesh. They destroyed the holy. What did they destroy the holy? They destroyed the Beis Hamikdash, right? So that's a simple pshat. The Sfarno says that you have to keep in mind that it's not the Jew that they hated. They hated the fact that they connected with something holy. Hashem, they hated you. We're just the scapegoats. By the way, if you look throughout generations, throughout history, this is a common theme of the anti-Semite. There's some anti-Semites that just hated Jews, but very often it was they hated God, and therefore the Jew became the scapegoat because they hated God. And this is the way the Sfarnu explains this pasuk, that they hated Kodesh, they hated the fact that there was a God, and they let it out on the Jewish people. There's a The
book you lent me clarifies that really well. What is Sinai? What's hate? Sinai.
Right.
Sinai. Same word.
Same sound. Right.
Eh?
Yeah. Good. Pasuk.
Actually read it, eh?
I didn't. Pasuk Dalet, Pasuk 4. I'll get to it. Maybe I'll buy myself a new copy. That's what I'm saying. Maybe I'll buy myself a new copy. Pasuk Dalet, Pasuk 4. Shogud Tzerechel. So these evildoers, these ones that destroyed the Beis Hamikdash, they Rashi points out that Moyed, and I brought it out also the first time we came around, that Oil Moyed is when Moses talks to Hashem in the Mishkan, what does it say? He goes into the Oil Moyed, into the tent of meetings, is the literal translation, right? So when we say
Kohen Gadol, when he goes in on Yom Kippur,
the Kodesh HaKadashim, yeah, but I don't know if it uses the word Moyed. Moyed is a place of meeting. So it's interesting. He uses over here that they make they laugh, or they roar, bekerev meyadecha, in the place of Moyed, in the meeting place. So what's the meeting place? Could be many different things. We're going to see in a moment. But Rashi right away comes and says the meeting place is just like we use it for Moyed. It's referring to the Beis Hamikdash. That when they were destroying the Beis Hamikdash, right? It's a simple pshat. Yeah. And not only that, they were successful. We're talking about Nebuchadnezzar, Nebuzaradan. I don't know if you're familiar with these names of the generals and that came and destroyed the Beis Hamikdash. When they came, they also had different types of oisais. So that's the end of the pasuk. That some oisais, that they had different is a sign, but it's more of like a wondrous sign, like a miraculous type of sign. But so they said, look, We're being successful, right? Look, our signs are working. Some way, some. The reason why I think the pasuk uses that word over here is because of the complaint that we're going to have later in pasuk 9 and pasuk Tez, saying, "Where's our sign?" The Jewish people are complaining, "Where's our sign?" Right? So that's why I think it's here. But still, the concept is that they were saying, and they laughed. They say, "Look, the Jewish people, there's nothing left of them. We're going to burn down their Beis Hamikdash, and there's nothing they can do about it. And our signs, our miracles, so to speak, quote unquote, is working." That's pasuk Dalet. I mentioned that pasuk Hey and Vav I had a hard time with. So I'm going to explain to you the way I understand the two psukim, not necessarily word for word. Pasuk Hey and Hey and Vav. There's a concept like this. At the time when the Jewish people built the Beis Hamikdash, so what did they have to do? There's a lot of different jobs that had to be done. One of the jobs that had to be done was to go to this forest to get wood and to chop the wood there was such a joy by the Jewish people when they were doing this that they felt that they were like bringing a sacrifice, right? Like, imagine if we had the opportunity, amen, we should have the opportunity today to go build the third Beis Hamikdash, right? We have the opportunity to be a part, to put a brick in the Beis Hamikdash. What kind of joy it would bring to us? Be a tremendous joy, right? So think about it then. Of course, they had a tremendous joy. And it was as if, for them, it felt like they were bringing a sacrifice. Like it was such joy and would consider to be an offering for above. If you look at pasuk, hey, kemevi lamaila, as if bringing an offering above. This is the feeling that they had. And not only that, it says something that when they would use the wood would somehow get consumed while they were cutting the wood, and I'm not sure exactly what the medrash means by that, but that was some sort of feeling of joy and sacrifice that the Jewish people had when they built the Beis Hamikdash. Now we're talking about destruction.
I think it's not just bringing wood for the sacrifice. I think it's decoration of the Beis.
No, but
decorated the Beis Hamikdash with wood panels, with wood carving. Right. When the Goyim came in, when the Romans came in, it says they smashed everything. They smashed all the panels. And not only that, but they burned everything to the ground. Right. That, to me, it's like a guy looking at the Ark of Titus. And this is what he writes. A Jew who comes, looks at the Ark of Titus, and he's making a lamentation. I know, he looks and he says, look what they did.
Right. By the way, I forgot to bring up lamentation. I put it into the email. I forgot to mention that pasuk Beis, something that we say in Slichas. In Slichas before Rosh Hashanah, right? That week before Rosh Hashanah that we say Slichas, Saturday night before. This is a pasuk that's very common in Slichas. It goes into what we said at the beginning, that it's a very solemn few chapters talking about the Jewish people in exile. So what I was trying to explain, pasuk Hey, pasuk Vav is what you were saying, is that they came in, right? The people came and destroyed the Beis Hamikdash. They came in with their hammers and their hatchets, and they smashed the ornaments, etc. It's actually interesting. If you look historically, the Medrash talks about the details, and it's brought down in Tanakh. Nebuzaradan, he sent, if I remember correctly, 300 donkeys or some animal that laden with all different types of metal things to break through the gates of Jerusalem, of the Beis Hamikdash, and every time they would use an axe or something like that, it would break until there was the Medrash says it was a heavenly voice. He was going to give up. It was a heavenly voice. No, Hashem wants you to destroy the Beis Hamikdash, and then he can. And the next hit broke through the iron gates of that he was trying to get through. So a Medrash like that.
What does he mean by ornaments?
Things hanging on the walls of the Beis Hamikdash.
Religious things or
Jewish things? I mean, Beis Hamikdash things. Holy things. I don't know what it means.
No, I mean, that's
I don't know what
really weren't allowed to really.
I don't know. So maybe it was on the gates on the outside.
Decorate. That's what I'm saying.
You could show pictures. You could show pictures. You could show carvings of Moshe going up the mountain, or you could show a carving of the sea splitting. Why not?
I don't know.
That's not a carving of Hashem.
I don't know. That's what I'm asking you, Phil.
Don't forget, You look in our shul, you see two big Roman pillars on the side of the Aron HaKodesh. And the flowers are in big Greek vases. They lived in those times and they were influenced. There's a lot of decoration which is even worse, which we use it. Okay, we don't put swastikas in our shul, but we put Roman columns in our shul.
Sometimes, yeah.
It's almost the same thing, just happened a few hundred years before.
Right.
I once told us, the rabbis, I said, the same like a swastika. It's just a swastika is recent, and they slaughtered hundreds of thousands of people,
I don't think
also the Romans.
Right. It is mind-boggling.
Full of those things.
Yeah. It's an interesting observation. Obviously not the same as swastika, but still.
No, there's my observation.
Yeah, but still,
That's what I so.
No, it's like it's a question today. Do we still, 10 years ago, 20 years ago for sure, you wouldn't find a Jew buying a German car.
Right.
Hardly, right? Today, it's almost like I know people who still get upset when they see it, though. One second. This past Shabbos, Ari Makovka came back. He was in Germany on a business trip, and on Shabbos he went to Chabad in Berlin, and he went to one of the museums on one of the days that he was there, and he was pleasantly surprised that there were schools there, not Jewish schools, there were German schools, and he says, and he understands Yiddish, so he understood exactly what they were saying, and they were not whitewashing anything. They were saying it the way it happened to so on tshuva, at least most of them have done a real tshuva, right? So that balance of it. But
what you're saying is it's a line of progress that in 1,000 years could be like the Roman columns in the shul.
Right.
You can have decoration shows. They made amends 1,500 years ago.
Right. I hear you.
You have to make.
I hear you. You can't compare the two because the swastika actually represents the anti-Semitism. It actually represented an ideology. Roman columns don't represent an ideology.
Members, sure it does. It's the power of Rome.
No, it was a certain style that happens to be that these anti-Semites and these Roman anti-Semites also had a certain type of architecture, as opposed to the swastika actually represented the ideology, which is banned today, right?
Maybe.
The Roman columns, they never got banned.
Right now.
Yeah, I don't know. I hear you. I hear you. I'm not just saying in my mind.
Beautiful Grecian urns. You know the Grecian urn? What a Grecian urn. And we have our flowers, the two big bouquets of flowers.
For sure.
They're in there all the time. They're there all the time.
Yeah.
People love it.
Just an interesting aside to what you're saying. Germany right now is the fastest growing Jewish country in the world.
Right. I don't know if now, they were a few years ago. I don't think anymore.
I think, well, maybe now not.
Now Europe is not a place that Jews are running to, but it was a few years ago.
They're there.
Yeah, there is a lot of Jews there, especially Russian. Yeah, especially Russian. Okay. Pasuk Zayin, Pasuk 7. So they burned down the Beis Hamikdash, right? They Shilchu ba'esh mikdashecha. They burned down the Beis Hamikdash. After they destroyed the ornaments, they burned down the Beis Hamikdash. La'aretz, to the ground. Chil mishkan shmecha. They destroyed the Beis Hamikdash down to the ground. Pasuk Ches, Pasuk 8. Amru b'libam ninam yachad sarfu komede kel ba'aretz. So since their whole goal, as we mentioned before, there's a few commentaries that bring this up. That the evildoers, the ones that were destroying the Beis Hamikdash, their goal was against Hashem. Their goal wasn't the Jewish people were the byproduct of that, right? So since their whole goal was against Hashem, so what happens? Yeah, if the Ninam, he translates over here Ninam as rulers, yeah. So the rulers, they join together. Ninam Yachad, the rulers of different nations, they get together and they say in their hearts, Amar B'libam, and they say in their hearts, they say the negativity that they have in their hearts. What do they say? Sarfu Kol Maya, they kill about it. Not just the Beis Hamikdash, but any meeting place. every shul. What happened in Germany or not just Germany? All the shuls, right? All the Beis Medrashes, all the places of learning, all the places of davening. Kol Me'edekel Ba'aretz wanted to destroy all of that because it wasn't against the Jew, it was against Hashem. Pasuk Tes, Pasuk 9. Now here comes the complaint. Right, here comes the complaint. Like so, say no, why don't we see those miracles? Why don't we see a sign that Hashem is looking out for us? Where's our sign that Hashem is looking out for us? And Ein Oid Navi, there's no more Navi, there's no more prophet. We don't know. We don't know for how long.
The data is the first. Ein Itanu Yodea, Misha Yodea. We don't have Navis. We don't have seers even, less than a Navi. One who could say, this is what, who could predict in a way the times. That's what I think Yodea means. It's Lo Itanu Yodea. There's no knower, a person who could lead us, who can show us. Not that we don't know.
Right.
I think it's like Navi is a noun, so is Yodea. It's a type of a person. That's what I think.
Good.
It's similar to what it translates here also, but
right. So Rashi over here comes and says that we're looking for signs. We look around, and when we go through a hard time, we look around, we look for some sort of sign that Hashem is still looking out for us, etc., etc. What signs are we looking for? We're looking for the signs that Hashem already promised to the Navi. This is not something new that we're looking for. We're looking for the promise that Hashem already gave to the Navi of when Mashiach will come, when there will be a Geula, when there will be a redemption. And we don't know how long we're going to be here in this Golus. How long is this Tzara going to go on for? This is the way Rashi explains it. Radak, he focuses on this idea that there's no more Navi. So the simple pshat, there's no more Navi. So we're talking about at a time after Chag Zechariah, right? After the official prophets, after Navi. That's it. It's closed. The book is closed on Nevi'im, and there's no more Navi. There's no more. There after Malachi, right? There's no more prophets. So that's one way to learn this pasuk, that it's referring to a time of galus, of exile, that there's no prophets anymore, right? And the other thing he says, he says, no, it could be talking about much later, time when Mashiach is coming. But the Navi didn't come yet and tell us that Mashiach is here. We're waiting for Eliyahu Navi, right? We're waiting for that prophet that's going to come with Mashiach. It's going to say, "He gives my gulaschem, your time of Mashiach has come." It's it's a play on the pasuk, but it's a beautiful thing, right? We don't see the signs yet. We're waiting also for that Navi, for that prophet of Mashiach to come, and we don't know until when he's coming, etc. It's interesting. I just have to pause it for a moment, because I say, the fact that we say that we don't see the signs from Hashem is something that we have to qualify, because a person might understand that and say that, so Hashem's not running the world. Other Hashem is Aretz, which is a concept that is brought down of evil people say, yeah, Hashem created the world. Okay, we could believe that, but then he let it run within the nature that Hashem created with it. Now we know that everything that happens here in this world is by divine providence. Hashem does run it. The thing is that it's hidden, and that's what the pasuk is saying. He knows that we don't see the signs from Hashem is because everything that Hashem does, He hides it within nature. And that's and sometimes we could, if we're privy, if we're lucky enough, sometimes we could see a sign from Hashem that even goes beyond nature, something that won't even make sense in nature. But to just have to qualify this, in fact, we don't see the sign doesn't mean that Hashem is not there. Of course, Hashem is right there with us and is right there guiding along the world as we move along. Pasuk 10, Pasuk Yud. So Admasai. What does Admasai mean? Until when? It's a very strong question of until when. Admasai Hashem, until when? You're going to let this thing happen. So Metzudah says, how long are you going to let the nations of the world say that Hashem can take care of his nation? Right? How long are you going to let them blaspheme Hashem? And he ends off, Admasai, Lo Netzach, are you going to let them go on forever? right? He puts a question mark at the end. The Alshich says that Ad Masai, how long Hashem are you going to let it happen? Okay, Mela, I don't deserve it. But they're designating your name. If you're not going to do it for me, if you're not going to do it for the Jewish people, because maybe so do it for your name, for the sake of your name. We say this very often in the Seres Mitzvah, right? For one of the Avinu Malkenos, say Leman Shmecha. I don't deserve it, but do it for the sake of your name, because otherwise people can say Hashem can't. He promised the Jewish people a Mashiach, and is not bringing him a Mashiach. It's interesting. The Rebbe, it's a little bit connected to this pasuk, but it reminded me because of the words Ad Masai. The Rebbe used to use this word Ad Masai very, very often. There's used to also a children's song, Ad Masai, Ad Masai. Do we have to wait? One Mashiach now. We don't want to wait, right? And the Rebbe would Ad Masai was something the Rebbe would scream. And what would the Rebbe say? What the Rebbe says on more than one occasion, and it's connected also to this chapter. That what is the whole point of Golus? Hashem has a plan for Golus. There is a plan. What's the plan for Golus? We weren't good. We weren't deserving. So you need to go through a refining process of Golus, and then you'll have Mashiach. You'll have the third base of English, right? It's a process. It must. We've suffered. It's unfathomable to think that we need more suffering. We went through so much stuff, and then everyone would scream at Masai. At this point, it already doesn't make sense. Yeah, the beginning of Golus, okay, we understand this is what Hashem said. So at Masai, how much longer? And the Rebbe would say that we have to scream at Masai. We have to ask from Hashem at Masai how much longer.
I remember very well when they murdered in India, that rabbi and who was in India, I think.
In Mumbai, yeah.
And his wife, and the Rebbe said, at Masai. In the meantime, days go by. And things happen. They get murdered. Days go by. It
wasn't about Mumbai, because Mumbai happened after 94, after the Rebbe passed away. But there was other situations. It was another terrorist, or
it was another
terrorist thing. Yeah, the Rebbe, the Ad Masai was something that and not on the same thing. We talked about the Holocaust before. There were certain rabbis after the Holocaust that would try to give reasons. The Holocaust happened because this guy wasn't religious enough. Or it's unfathomable that no matter how far a person would have gone, that such a thing should have happened. It doesn't make sense. They would scream at Masai in that way. So we suffered so much. Hashem has to send Mashiach. That was the Rebbe's approach. So as you could see, it's not a new approach. Going back thousands of years, in Tehillim is also this approach. Ad Masai, how long are you going to make this happen, Hashem? Yeah. Pasuk Yud Aleph, Pasuk 11. So we're asking, the psalmist is asking Hashem to get involved, so to speak, right? Hashem should do something about it. So why are you holding back? Yadcha, your hand, Yemincha, your right hand. Some commentaries say Yadcha is referring to the left hand, Yemincha to your right hand. It could be that it's just poetic that he's saying it in that way. But at the end of the pasuk, take your hand out of your pockets, right? Mikerev, take your hands out of your pockets. Do something. Don't just stand and watch, right? That's the simple pshat. The Radak says, though, and he takes it on a different level. Well, actually, the Radak says both. He says what I said. He says, but there's also actually this is what he says second. And he said, but first he says there's also another piddush over here that get your hands like your right hand, your left hand, your right hand, right? And Mikerev Cheikha, the enemy that's in your bosom, get them out of here. That's another way to learn the same pasuk. Huh?
I find this all very strange. It's because if you look at after the destruction of the Second Temple, much of the writing of the prophets who still existed for that short, it was all about almost the opposite of this. It was all, why Hashem have you left us? Why are we divorced from you now? Are we not your chosen people?
Some of it is said over here.
This seems to be
so
to me the opposite. It seems to me
So first of all, at the beginning, we actually said those words. Hashem, why did you abandon the sheep that you're supposed to? Now, the thing is, the difference, the way I see it at least, is that this is talking about much later. We're talking about today. So in the beginning, okay, Hashem, we feel bad. We did something wrong. Take us back right now. But 2,000 years later, Hashem, like, oh, come on, this is already exaggerated. That's the difference between now and the way the prophet said about the destruction.
That the basic people felt that that Hashem had left them. I think there's the famous, I forget what the story is, but I think it's with Yirmiyahu, and you might correct it, when he says to Yirmiyahu, who wrote the writ of divorce? Who divorced? Who? That wasn't the exact word, but who wrote the writ of the divorce between us?
So for a nation that's used to having a divine revelation by just walking into the Beis Hamikdash, then now they can't do it. So they feel like they feel the big loss. This is because again, 2,000 years later, I don't feel the loss of the Beis Hamikdash.
Okay, so you're saying it's okay.
I feel the suffering and the pain and the suffering that we're going through. You understand the difference? Yeah. Someone that just experienced spirituality and can't do that anymore. It's a big discussion now in Chabad. There's an article going around, whatever. The difference between someone like me, or better, my father, who experienced going in for private audiences with the Rebbe, from Rengens with the Rebbe, directives. He had a question, he would go to the Rebbe, he was able to get somewhat of an answer or whatever, depending on what it was, right? Versus me, that, okay, I was a child, but I still remember it. I have very vivid memories of being by the Rebbe, versus my kids that are growing up just with me telling them what I saw, and they have to create their own connection or whatever it's going to be, right? So it's a big discussion in Chabad of how it should be, what it should be. It's not a discussion for now. My point is that obviously the guy that was yesterday bringing a sacrifice in the Beis Hamikdash and now feels like, whoa, Hashem, you abandoned me, feels orphaned in that kind of way, versus the guy 100 years later, 2,000 years later, that is not focused so much on the Beis Hamikdash. Yes, we talk about the Beis Hamikdash and we want the Beis Hamikdash, etc., for the divine revelation that will be. We understand it? No, but what do we understand? The pain and suffering that we're going through, that our parents went through, that we went through, and that's this kapitel Tehillim. So that's the difference between maybe a prophecy like around the destruction versus what the prophecy of this chapter that's talking about later. Yeah.
I'm just curious. Just bring up a question way out of line, probably.
So I'm like, probably okay, maybe after the class.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just the question you mentioned that your children and other generations. I mean, I always say that I wish I had an opportunity to meet him, but I didn't because I never even cared about it till later on. But that's not the point. The point is, but if there was another Rebbe, would that solve the kids' problem? Would that maybe?
It's a theoretical question that I could give you a theoretical answer. Yeah. It doesn't mean anything.
Will there ever be another one?
No, not in Chabad.
There will never be another Rebbe who will be the head of Chabad.
Not in Chabad. Pasuk Yud Beis, Pasuk 12. Velikim Malki Mikedem. This is the pasuk that for the Rebbe's 73rd birthday they made a niggin on this pasuk. Velikim Malki Mikedem, and Hashem was king over the universe, reigned over the universe, Mikedem, from the beginning. As Rashi says, that Poil Yeshua's Hashem's salvation that he did was from the beginning of time. Poil Yeshua's was from Mikedem. From the beginning of time, Hashem was always, Poil Yeshua's was always bringing salvation to the Jewish people. Pasuk Yud Gimel, Pasuk 13. So again, this is talking about the different things, different salvations that Hashem has brought for the Jewish people. So what happened when Hashem split the sea? So Rashi says, he actually brings it down over here on the bottom, but Rashi says that the sea monsters is actually not talking about Leviathan, it's talking about the Egyptians. When the Egyptians ran after the Jewish people, right? So first of all, Hashem split the sea, right? Mitzvah also. Yeah.
Very interesting.
So this is the historical where Hashem was salvation. Mitzvah brings down. He says, "At the with your strength, the spiritual strength, the figurative strength, the creative strength that Hashem had. What did He do? He split the sea. According to the Medrash, there was 12 paths. Each tribe went through their own path, right? And according to the Medrash, also it's brought down that the water was hardened. The water wasn't the water wasn't soft water that just became paths. It became hard, became rock hard. The Egyptians, it says that they died because their heads bashed into the hard water, whatever that means. But that's so it's also the Metzudas brings it down on this pasuk because he says Shibarta, you broke Rashi Taninim, you broke the heads of the Taninim of these sea creatures, which is the Egyptians. You broke it on the water. How do you break a head on water? You don't break a head on water. If it's ice, right? If it's hard like a rock, then you could break a head on water. So that's what.
Very, very interesting.
Yeah.
Because when they went across the sea, it says Tzalanu Koferet V'Mayim Adiri. That's what they sank like lead. He's referring to the Egyptian horsemen and their chariots and all of that.
Right, exactly. Also, the next pasuk. So the next pasuk, pasuk 14, right? So the Leviathan that he's talking about there, the Leviathan that he's talking about over here, Rashi says it's talking about Pari himself. Pari is the Leviathan. Right, and what's the food that you left food for the faraway people? For what? So Rashi says it's the spoils. No, it's the spoils from the Egyptians. The Egyptians died there, and all those spoils that they got. That's what he's referring to. That's Titeh. So Hashem, meaning the salvation. The man is the man is also something. So it's a miracle that Hashem did as a salvation for the Jewish people living through the desert. But here, at least according to Rashi, talking about the miracle of the Egyptians running after the Jewish people, them not surviving, the spoils that the Jewish people took. So Rashi says that it's talking about Pare. Leviathan is talking about Pare. Metzudah says that's not just Pare; it's talking about Pare and his generals. As you can see at the bottom of note 3 on page 90, you see it says Pharaoh and his chieftains. It's taking it straight from the Metzudas. Pasuk 15. So there's two things over here that you split. On the one hand, there was a Mayim v'Nochal that he split, and there was a Nahar, a river that Hashem dried out. Right? So we talked about that. There's the Psukim are bringing the opposites, the different opposites over here. It's interesting because when it came to splitting of the sea, Hashem did one thing for the Jewish people and something very different for the Egyptians that are running after them, right? Split the sea for the Jewish people. He put it back for the regulars. So and throughout the desert also, Hashem took care of the Jewish people as they traveled through the desert. So the Al-Shich says this is what this pasuk is trying to say. The salvation. You brought up the manna. It wasn't just the manna. He's going to talk about it actually. The water. Yeah, he's going to bring the water in a moment. The next pasuk. Not the next pasuk, and yeah. So right. So he brings all the different things that he. Yeah. So Rashi. Oh yeah. Exactly over here. Rashi says that on the one hand you brought water out of a stone, right, and on the other hand you dried out. It was the Jordan River. Radak says, and others say that it was a today the Jordan River is crossable. Very crossable. I don't know if you ever went kayaking or in the Jordan River. So it's crossable. It's not so complicated to go over the Jordan River. But it seems that it was much more overflowing back then. If I'm not mistaken, even today there's a dam higher up that holds back the Jordan River. I don't know why in my head I seem to remember something like that. So technically it could be much more wide and more of a rush. Right, and the rush makes it more dangerous to go across, and Hashem dried it up, so to speak, in order for the Jewish people, because when they came Taka with Yeshua coming into Eretz Yisrael, they had to go over the Jordan.
The river stopped.
Yeah, so that's Atay Vashnei. So these are again different salvations that Hashem has brought for the Jewish people throughout the throughout the years. Yeah, Ason. Yeah, now Ason is strong. Yeah. Pasuk 16. Hashem, you created day, you created night, right? So since he's mentioning opposites, the Radak says, so he also mentions the opposites that Hashem creates day, Hashem creates night. There's blessings in the fact that there's daylight and darkness. Even though today we could turn on a light and we could sit, it's dark outside, but we could still sit and learn Torah inside. Back in the day, it was the way people kept healthy, because you can't work a whole 24 hours. You have to take a pause. So it was the blessing that night comes, etc. So that's what the Radak mentions. It's interesting because Rashi over here says, usually Rashi is simple pshat, and here Rashi goes and he takes it a little bit more on the drush level. He says, L'cha yom v'l'cha layla. Yom represents the good times. Layla represents the hard times, right? Daytime and nighttime, the good times and the hard times. So Rashi says that both of them come from Hashem, but right, the good times and the bad times both come from Hashem. But he says, but you also prepared us for it. How did he prepare us for it? How did Hashem prepare us for Galus? Mar v'shemesh. What's Mar v'shemesh? What's Mar v'shemesh? Hashem prepared us for the bad times with Mar v'shemesh. What's Mar v'shemesh? Mar. So here he translates Mar. They're both lights. So one is the sun and one is the moon. Shemesh is the sun. Mar is the moon. Right? But what is it referring to? It's referring to the Torah. Hashem created both Galus and Geula come from Hashem, but Hashem gave us the Torah in order to survive even the hardest of times. Pasuk 17. Pasuk Yudayim. So Hashem created limitations to the world, and summer and winter. So the Ibn Ezra says that also, again, with this opposites, the way Hashem creates the world, that it's summer over here, so it's winter down under. It's winter down under, it's summer over here, right? So this also the opposites, and Radak says that also talking about the positives of the cold and the warm that Hashem created also in this world. Now, so that's the opposites. Through Pasuk 17, we talk about the opposites and the salvation that Hashem brings here into this world. Pasuk Yudches, Pasuk 18. So Rashi says, since our salvation will only come from you, right? Our salvation will only come from Hashem. So Zecher Zeis Oyev Cherev Hashem. Remember those who started up with us, with Hashem, etc. Remember them. Hashem that has done all of these, Radak mentioned, Hashem that has done all these Isis, all these wonders, all these miracles of salvation for the Jewish people. Remember those who went against Hashem, against the Jewish people, but against Hashem, blaspheming against Hashem. Pasuk Yutes, Pasuk 19. Al titin l'chayis nefesh terecha, chayis aniyecha al tishkach hanetzach. Don't let, Rashi says, the nations of the world are the anti-Semitic nations of the world are referred to as chayos. What's a chaya? Wild animal, right? Animals. That started up with the Jewish people. The Jewish people are referred to a Torah. Torah is a certain type of dove. It translates over here, turtle dove. The Mefarshim say that it's a unique dove. There's different types of birds, and there's a dove, and within doves there's different types of doves. What's the uniqueness of this dove is that when a male and female get together, even if one disappears or dies, the other one will never be with another bird ever again. Whether it's scientifically correct or not doesn't matter. The analogy is an important analogy because it refers to the Jewish people's relationship with Hashem. No matter also, anybody who entices us, we're not going anywhere. We're going to connect with Hashem, and that's it.
Doves, traditionally, and it was known then for sure also, come back.
The messengers, yeah.
Come back.
Yeah. Always come home.
You send it away, it comes back. Why did it say? Why did Noah send a crow, a raven?
Goodbye.
Secondly, he sent the dove.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a different.
Yeah,
symbol.
a homing bird. Yeah. Pasuk 19. Pasuk 20. Yeah, Habeit Labris. So Hashem, again, we're circling back. Mitzvah says, look to the covenant that you made, the bris vein absarim, the covenant that you made with our forefathers, right? And there were certain promises that were made. There were promises made with Avram Avinu, that even though the Jewish people are gonna end up in exile, but ultimately they're gonna go out of exile. Whether there was a promise about Mitzrayim, but in general there's that promise. But the problem is that now they're in exile. They're in a dark place in exile. The pasuk ends. It's a very interesting way. The pasuk ki malu machshake eretz. They end up in very dark ends of the world, and it's malei chamas. It's full of violence in these ends of the world. So it's time for Mashiach to come already. Pasuk Chaf Aleph, pasuk 21. Al Yashiv Dach Nichlam. Don't turn back to the oppressed and to the disgraced. So this is again another reason for salvation. Another reason why Hashem should send Mashiach. Don't turn away from the oppressed that are trying to pray towards Hashem. The Yidden, we're suffering. We're trying. Don't turn away from the prayers that we're turning towards you, Hashem. The Radak says when you listen to the prayers of the Yidden, what's going to happen? They're going to praise you even more. So listen to their prayers. It's interesting. Alshich, who likes to take things a little bit more mystical, has a beautiful piddush on this pasuk. I saw it only after I prepared the whole class, and I had to put it in. I loved it. Al Yoshev Dach Nichlam. So said there's a famous medrash. It's not just a medrash; it's a prophecy. I think it's a Zechariah prophecy that Mashiach is going to be a poor person. You're going to be a poor person sitting at the gates of the city, and he's going to be tending his bandages. And he even goes on. He says, "How do you know the difference between a regular poor person and the Mashiach poor person?" He says, "A regular poor person, he opens up all his wounds, all his bandages. He puts on, polysporin, and then he closes all of them, right?" He says, Mashiach, he does them one by one. Why? Because what if Hashem comes and says, now is the time, he should be able to get up and run and not have to close up all his bandages. There's a prophecy, if I remember correctly, from Zechariah, or maybe it's like a mother, but I think it's a prophecy from Zechariah, if I remember correctly. Anyway, so the Alshich says, what's Mashiach doing the whole time? He's just doing, Hashem, can I go now? Can I go to the Jewish people? I'm ready. Can I go? Can I go? He's asking Hashem. So the pasuk is telling Hashem, Al Yash, don't turn to that poor person, to Mashiach, the poor that's asking to reveal himself. Don't turn away. Al Yashiv Dach Nichlam. Don't turn away from the poor that is asking you to reveal himself as Mashiach. Don't turn away from. So the Alshich explains pasuk 21. Pasuk Chabez, pasuk 22. Hashem, get up and fight your fight. Riva, rivecha. Fight your fight. What is your fight? So again, it's something we mentioned earlier in the chapter, that maybe we're not taka worthy. Maybe that's why Mashiach didn't come yet. Maybe I'm not worthy. Okay, fine. So what? But for your sake, it's time to take Jewish people out of exile. Pasuk Chav Gimel, pasuk 23, and don't forget the voice or the roars of the enemies. Don't forget the noises that they made during the destruction of the temple, right? We started off the chapter with the noises, the roars that they made during the destruction of the temple. They've continued to make those roars against the Jewish people, against those who learn Torah, do mitzvahs. So don't forget those people as well. And we should be zeicha, we should merit, the Mashiach should come, and we should be done with all this pain and suffering that we go through here in this world. And with that, we finish. After 7.